Episode 170.
How did you confirm my identity was above board, and then stop me directly to hand over the mobilization order? Surely you don't think it's just because of this yellow Maple Valley robe.
Han Li had originally planned to slip past the cultivators from the Saber Transformation sect and the Concealing Moon sect entirely, but this sharp-eyed fellow flickered over and blocked his path, directly conscripting him on the spot.
I saw you during the last blood-forbidden trial, junior brother. I never expected that a few years later you'd have successfully established your foundation. Truly a cause for celebration.
Han Li finally recognized him. They had indeed crossed paths during the blood-forbidden trial.
I am Xuan Lei, one of the external affairs stewards of the Concealing Moon sect. Last time I accompanied Senior Nishang on a mission, I saw with my own eyes Junior Han's shocking display of wealth.
It was only then that Han Li finally remembered. This man had been one of the 4 Foundation establishment team leaders from the Concealing Moon sect back then. He just hadn't paid much attention at the time, so his impression was somewhat fuzzy.
We only met briefly back then. For him to recognize me from this distance is honestly hard to believe.
I know, Junior Brother Han, that you must be in a hurry for something else. But I'm seriously short-handed for the task at hand, so I'll have to ask you to lend a hand, Junior Brother.
You're a late Foundation establishment cultivator, and you've already pulled out the conscription order. Even if I wanted to refuse, I couldn't. If I didn't listen, I'd be slapped with the charge of defying orders. Since Senior Marshal Brother Xuan puts it that way, Han naturally obeys. However, there is one important matter I must report to the sect leader. I would ask Senior Brother Xuan to send word on my behalf.
Han Li then recounted everything that had happened at Yanlin Fort in full detail, though he glossed over how he himself had escaped. Even so, it left Xuan Lei and the others utterly shaken. They quickly dispatched 2 Qi condensation disciples to deliver messages to the various sects, then, with grim expressions, continued leading Han Li onward. Given their strength, even knowing the Yan family had colluded with the demonic sect, they wouldn't dare march in to rescue anyone. So they had no choice but to pass this hot potato to the next group sent by their sect. Of course, the truth of this news would still need to be verified by those who came after Han Li. During the journey, Han Li finally learned their mission from the other cultivators. They were to reinforce the guard of a larger spirit stone mine, as the current guards were insufficient to fend off sneak attacks from demonic cultivator squads. When Han Li learned the mission wasn't to serve as cannon fodder in a direct clash with the 6 devil sects, he finally breathed a sigh of relief.
Even if I could return to Yellow Maple Valley, I'd probably be sent out again immediately, and the mission I'd get might not be any better than this one. This mission has its risks, but as long as I stay cautious, the odds of making it out unscathed are still quite high. After all, our Spirit Stone mine is just one of the larger dozen or so. If they wanted to strike at the 7 sects source, they'd go for the biggest ones first.
With that thought, Han Li's resistance faded. Over the next few days, he spent considerable time with Xuan Li and the other cultivators. Several days later, the pair of cultivators finally reached a vast wasteland within Yue State. The Spirit Stone mine lay inside a canyon over 100 zhang deep, hidden within that barren expanse. Led by Xuan Lei, the group flew straight into the canyon concealed by the formation, while several cultivators from the 7 sects emerged from within to greet them. The original guard captain of the Spirit Mine was an old Foundation establishment cultivator from the Absolute Heaven Fortress, while the other 5 or 6 were only at the Qi condensation level. With such weak defenses, it was no wonder the upper echelons of the 7 sects were so anxious to send reinforcements. The old man who called himself Yu Xing led them into a massive cave dwelling within the canyon. There, Han Li and the others listened as he laid out the details of the Spirit Stone mine. Then Xuan Lei swiftly and decisively began arranging the defenses. He produced over a dozen formation flags and plates, then had the cultivators set up a 4-sha kill array beneath the original formation, one capable of both offense and defense. He split Han Li and the others into several groups, rotating them to patrol and stand watch near the Spirit Mine in case of an enemy ambush. Those not on duty could sit and meditate to recover some magic power. Han Li was quite satisfied with Xu and Yui's arrangements.
This way, I'll have time to properly patch up the holes in my strength.
After his fierce clash with the ghost spirit sect's young master, Han Li realized that his old reliance on speed and cunning to overcome enemies was utterly useless against a true disparity in raw power. When he ran into a formidable opponent like the ghost spirit sect's young master, everything he had once prided himself on seemed utterly powerless. Even the talisman treasure he had placed such high hopes on had nearly been seized in one go, failing to deliver its usual decisive effect.
If not for the poison cloud from the green fire staff taking effect unexpectedly, I would have long since been buried beneath the yellow earth, my very soul possibly seized by that foe and subjected to endless torment.
The mere thought of such a living hell sent chills racing down Han Li's spine. At the same time, he grew deeply wary of the blood spirit art, a top-tier demonic secret technique.
If I run into that ghost spirit sect young master again, I'll probably just end up helpless under his secret technique again. Without reaching core formation, the Azure Essence sword art simply lacks the power to contend. In this chaotic era, with the 6 Devil Dao sects invading Yue and the 7 Great sects fighting back, cultivators killing each other will become a daily affair. In times like these, the pursuit of immortality seems to take a back seat. Instead, rapidly increasing one's strength to survive the chaos has become the primary goal. This means I'll have to adjust my original cultivation plan. The Azure Essence sword art will have to be set aside for now, and I'll need to focus on the Great Development art first to rapidly increase my strength.
Having witnessed the sheer dominance of the mechanical puppets, Han Li believed that even mastering just the first layer of the great derivative art would grant him a decent measure of self-protection. After all, he had several dozen ready-made puppet mechanisms right on him.
Of course, I'll also need to study the puppet true scripture. I hope I can craft some simple mechanical puppets in a short time. Only then can the Great Development art become a sustainable combat power for my Foundation establishment stage.
After turning it over in his mind several times, Han Li felt certain his decision was sound, so he began cultivating the great derivative art in his off-duty hours. At the same time, he began using whatever simple materials he had on hand to try crafting basic mechanical beasts, puppets that could only lunge and bite like crude toys. On the wasteland, a lizard a few feet long poked its head out from under a half-weathered rock and crawled out, ready to begin its day's hunt. But just as it crawled out of its nest, a few jang from the rock, a yellow monster over a jang long suddenly burst from the sandy soil to one side. Using both its front claws and mouth, it viciously pounced on the lizard, easily snapping its neck. Then, clamping the corpse in its jaws, it bolted off in a frantic dash toward some unseen destination. This beast also had 4 claws and a long tail with a pointed snout. It looked like another giant lizard, but its entire body was stiff and hard, and as it ran, it let out a creaking, grinding sound. It was actually a fully intact mechanical construct. The beast ran over a mile, arriving at the side of a yellow-robed man meditating on a flat rock. It dropped the corpse behind him, then ran off again. The man in yellow showed no change in expression, not a trace of surprise. He casually waved his hand, and the lizard corpse floated levelly before him, hovering a few feet above the ground, perfectly still. Then, the man in yellow extended a single finger, pointing it at the lizard's head, his lips moving in a silent chant. Soon, the finger he had extended began to glow faintly, emitting a soft white light. As the incantation continued, the light grew brighter and brighter until it was almost blinding. Judging the moment was right, the man in yellow let out a low grunt. A thin white thread suddenly shot from the light on his finger, piercing deep into the lizard's skull. Then, with visible strain, he slowly pulled it back, his expression taut and cautious to the extreme. At last, under the yellow-robed man's careful watch, the white thread hooked a green orb of light from the dead lizard's body. It floated, weightless, no bigger than a thumb. Seeing this, the man in yellow was as if he had found a priceless treasure. With a flicker of light in his other hand, a small, pale yellow jade bottle appeared in his palm. Then, with a soft whoosh, several beams of iridescent light shot from the jade bottle, coiled around the green orb, and sucked it inside. Only then did the man in yellow let out a long, relieved sigh, wiping the faint sheen of sweat from his brow. Clearly, this last exertion had cost him no small amount of energy.
This soul-binding art really isn't something a foundation establishment beginner can pull off easily. The success rate is just too low, isn't it? Only 1 out of every 3 or 4 attempts works. Looks like I'll be stuck here for the entire day.
The man in yellow glanced at the small jade bottle in his hand, a helpless expression flickering across his face. This was none other than Han Li practicing the Dayan mantra. He was out in the desolate wilderness, nearly 100 miles from the Spirit Stone mine, collecting the souls of animals. This was the kind of thing only demonic cultivators usually did, yet Han Li was attempting it himself, all because he had studied the puppet scripture. After some preliminary research, he discovered that crafting a puppet required not only the standard materials used for refining a magic tool, it even required the souls of living creatures to be smelted together with the materials before it could truly be completed. Otherwise, the resulting puppet would possess no intelligence whatsoever. The higher the grade of the puppet, the more powerful the soul fused within it needed to be. Only then could the puppet's full potential be unleashed. To that end, the puppet scripture also appended 3 commonly used techniques of the demonic path: the soul summoning art, the soul condensation art, and the soul refining art. The soul pulling art was the very spell Han Li had just used, a technique to draw the spirit from a corpse. This spell was not only weak and unreliable, it could only be used on the recently deceased. The only advantage of this spell was its extremely low magic power requirement. It could be used normally at the Foundation Establishment middle stage. Of course, a Foundation Establishment initial stage cultivator like Han Li could barely manage it, but the success rate was far from reliable. The soul condensation art, then, was a technique for gathering and solidifying souls. After all, a truly powerful soul isn't easy to come by. Most higher-tier puppets rely on artificial souls stitched together from several or even dozens of weaker ones. Such a soul wasn't as effective as a naturally born powerful one, but it was still far better than using a low-grade soul. Thus, this technique was also essential for learning the art of puppetry. As for the final art, soul refining, the name itself says it all, a technique for refining and reshaping the soul. After all, ordinary living souls simply wouldn't do for fusing with a puppet. They had to be processed through special techniques and a certain degree of refinement first. As for that lizard-like mechanism beast from earlier, it was the first puppet Han Li successfully crafted after he cultivated the great divination art and split off his first independent divine sense. The souls fused into it were merely a few weasels he'd grabbed on a whim. But before that, Han Li had failed 7 or 8 times in a row. His success rate really wasn't anything to boast about.